For a transcript of this episode, training plans, and more, visit marathonsfortherestofus.com. Hey, Coach Carl here. Today I want to talk to you about what you need to do to prepare for a downhill marathon. Now, downhill marathons have gotten super popular lately. We've got the Revel series, we've got a bunch of local ones, and they're all geared around this idea of the course is downhill, so it's going to be easy and you're going to run super fast. So of course these have become really popular with people that are looking for a slight advantage in their marathon running, whether it's to PR or whether it's to Boston qualify or whether it's just to have a slightly easier, more enjoyable experience out there. But as a word of caution, downhill marathons are not always easier. They are much harder on your body because of the pounding. Your joints and your muscles are going to be taking a beating that whole time that you're running downhill. It may be, some of these races I think are so steep that there may be a braking effect as you're running downhill and you're not actually even getting the full benefit of running downhill. If it's a very consistent grade the whole time where you're using the same muscles over and over again in the same way, that can be really tiring and really fatiguing. And if it's a race that's downhill for say 16 or 18 miles and then all of a sudden flattens out, I mean, you're going to feel like you're running up a wall at that point because your muscles are so tired from the downhill. So downhill marathons may be a way to run a faster time. I would not classify them as easier, however, and I just want to make sure that we're on the same page there and use that as a note of caution as you're looking at downhill marathons. Now, if you do want to do a downhill marathon, there's a few things that I think that you need to keep in mind with your training that's a little bit different than it is with training for a flat or a hilly marathon. The first is that strength training becomes even more important. Now, I always think that strength training is important for the marathon, but a downhill course demands that you get as strong as possible before the race. Your quads are really going to take a beating when you're running downhill, so that's an area that you really want to focus on getting stronger before the race. And you want to do that in ways that are running specific, and you want to do it with ways that are eccentric exercises, which is a lengthening of the muscle rather than concentric exercises. So a great example of running specific exercises that may be helpful are things like squats, single leg squats, lunges. An example of things that wouldn't be helpful would say be like a leg extension machine in the gym. That's a concentric action and it's not very running specific because your feet aren't on the ground. You're not using the quads in the same way that you will when you run. Now, because of the angle of the downhill course, you also need to focus on core strength to make sure that you can keep an appropriate and efficient posture throughout the race. So again, core strength always important for marathoning, more important for a downhill marathon. And if you're serious about using a downhill marathon to run fast, I think it's best to work with a certified strength and conditioning specialist who can develop a plan that is appropriate for you and that is running specific and that will be effective at helping you absorb the pounding of the downhill course without letting it fatigue your muscles prematurely. This strength training, I think, is so important that if you have to drop 1 or 2 easy recovery days out of your weekly schedule, I think you should absolutely do it. I think that way you can make sure that you're the best prepared as possible for the race. Now, the second thing that you need to do is you need to practice sustained downhill running. This isn't too different from if you were training for a flat race or a hilly race. You'd want to do a good bit of your training on routes that match up with the marathon course. It's just that it's harder to find long sustained downhills to practice on. So you may have to drive outside of town a little bit. You may have to do some research and some reconnaissance to find a good place to do this. But you know, running downhill for 60 seconds or 90 seconds or 2 minutes, I mean, it's helpful, but it's not the same as running downhill for 26 miles. So if you can find a place where you can do some longer, even tempo runs or mile repeats or something like that on a grade that's similar to what you're running, that's going to be ideal. Now, because downhill running is so difficult on your body, you want to make sure that you build this up gradually over time, right? Don't start with a 4-mile tempo run downhill or you'll be super sore afterwards. You can start with something like, 60-second downhill repeats or something like that at marathon pace. You don't want to be sprinting down these, and then gradually build up from there. Now, on the subject of pace, you want to do some of your marathon pace training on these gradual downhills as well, because let's say you want to run 8-minute pace for the marathon. Well, 8-minute pace on downhills is going to feel very differently from an effort standpoint. It's going to feel very differently from, a muscular standpoint than 8-minute pace is on flats or on hills. And when you get into the race, you want to know what that effort should feel like so you can adjust depending on conditions or how you feel that day. And so it's important to do at least some of your marathon pace practice on those long sustained downhills as well. So from the physical side, those are the two things that I think you need to do in training. From the mental side, I just want to reiterate, don't expect the marathon to be easy. As my friend Steve says, you should go into every marathon thinking this is going to be the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. And I think if you do that, you're going to be well prepared for the inevitable pain of the marathon and maybe pleasantly surprised if everything goes really well and it does feel easy. Downhill marathons have some really great advantages and can help you run faster, but I don't think you ever want to go into one thinking it's going to be easy or you're really going to be freaking out when things still feel hard. So I hope that information is helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, let me know, and I'd love to hear what you thought of this video as well. Thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you next time.